Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining our onX Hunt 101 Masterclass for tonight. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes to let people roll in, get situated and everything before we really get started. While we're waiting, just some housekeeping items. Your audio and video are turned off, so if you have noise in the background or anything like that, don't worry. We can't see you. We can't hear you. If you have any questions, we have someone from our customer support team answering them in the Q&A feature along the bottom. So if you have questions, drop them in the Q&A box, not in the chat. The chat is just difficult for us to kind of keep track of and to answer your question. Q&A box is the spot for that. If you have questions that pertain to your account, as far as your billing, your password, if you have, sometimes we hear people say, that the account is acting like they don't have a membership, but they actually do. Those are best sent to our support email at help@onxmaps.com. If you are seeing that issue, we've heard from some folks that, hey, I purchased a membership, but it's acting like I'm not. You probably logged in with a different email address than what you purchased under, so double check that. What else? We are doing a giveaway tonight, so we're giving away some new t-shirts that we just got in. We'll post that giveaway link at the end of the class, so stick around for that. And this class is being recorded, so if you can't stay for the whole thing or you have to drop in and out, no worries. We'll have it up on the onX Hunt YouTube channel tomorrow. That's where all of our past master classes go, so you can go watch, all the way back to spring of 2022 when we started doing these. And we'll also send you an email tomorrow evening with the recording included on that. So you can just wait for that email and we'll send that out to you. And with that, looks like people are kind of rolling in. My name's Jack. I'll be kind of leading us through this today. I've been with onX for about 5 years, work on the marketing side, started in customer support. And speaking of customer support, I've got my buddy Connor here. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Connor on the customer support team. I've been with onX for about 1.5 years now. If you ever reach out to us, you're probably going to get me or one of the other guys helping out with this tonight.
Sweet. So enough of the housekeeping. Let's get into what we're talking about today. A lot to cover. Normally our classes run about an hour. We're going to probably be closer to 90 minutes today just because we're covering so much material. We're going to run through the different membership options, what a premium membership gets you, what an elite membership gets you, the differences there. We'll talk about finding your location on the map using the compass. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on map layers. That's a pretty complicated or involved part of the app. We'll talk about using offline maps for when you don't have cell service, using your map tools like waypoints and line distance and tracker. We'll go over your different base map and imagery options, how to do a search, and we'll wrap it up with some Q&A and giveaway. So I am going to just stop sharing here for a second while I pull up my tablet here. This one does have a little bit of a lag before it'll pop up there. So give it 1 second. There she goes. I will pull up my onX app here. So what will be, see, it's really lagging today. Here we go. So what we're looking at here is the onX Maps app. This is on a tablet. If you're on a phone, it'll look similar. This is the way most people use onX. So if you're watching us on your computer or on your TV or something right now, it might help to pull up the app on your phone so you can kind of follow along and do what we do on here. The first thing I'm going to do, I do have a little mouse cursor on here. I see the color is really dark. I don't know if you guys can follow that. We'll do our best. So if I move the map away from my location, I'm just going to move it over here outside of Missoula. If you're looking at a map and you don't know where you are, if you want to find where your location is, where you're standing right now, what you're going to do is in the lower right-hand corner, you're going to tap this button that looks kind of like a crosshair or kind of like a wagon wheel. That's going to turn blue and it's going to move the map back to your location. I can see That blue and white dot, that's us right now in Midtown Missoula, Montana. So that's how, if you're ever not seeing that dot, if for some reason you're not seeing yourself, tap that crosshair in the lower right-hand corner. If it gives you like a pop-up and says location services denied or permission required, something along those lines, you got to give onX your permission to access the GPS in your device. Without us having that permission, we can't show you on the map. So you got to make sure you have that enabled. That's something that trips people up from time to time.
One thing with that too, if you guys are indoors, you might see that blue dot moves around a little bit. GPS works best when you're outside. So if it is moving around just a bit, not to worry, when you get out to the field, that's going to get right onto your location.
And I've definitely seen it, and I've heard it's true. When you're moving, it's easier for it to tell where you are versus if you're standing still, it can track like a moving object better than a stationary one.
Yep.
As well. So we found our location. Let's talk about using the compass. So I've got that blue crosshair in the lower right-hand corner. I'm going to click it one more time. Now you can see that crosshair has turned into like a blue arrow, and my blue dot on the map looks a little different. It's got what we call a sight cone coming off the front of it. That sight cone is pointing the direction that my device, my phone, is facing. So if I hold up this tablet here and I start slowly moving it around, you can see my map starts to rotate so that whatever direction I'm facing is up on the map instead of normally, like north is up on the map like we're accustomed to. So that's super useful if you're hiking down a trail and you need to make sure you take the, the right fork or the left fork, or, you're trying to make sure you make the right turn. If you're following a track that you had laid down earlier, anything like that, super nice to have that. If you're blood trailing an animal, I put it in that mode so that I can kind of see what's coming up, whether there's, a steep drop off coming up or some water or whatever, just so I know what's lying ahead of me. So that's kind of the basic compass mode. You'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, there's now a button that looks like a compass with the needle on there. If I click that, now I go into, this is pretty new for us. This came out this spring or this summer.
Yeah, not too long ago.
Kind of our new compass mode. This is really the first fall hunting season with it. So what's cool with this, along the top, you can see I've got a compass bearing where it shows me the degrees there and what direction I'm facing. That's been a request from folks for quite a while. You can also see coming off of my dot is this kind of dashed line, almost like a rangefinder. If you look to the left of the screen, you can see different yardage markers on there. So I can kind of take a look at, right now, these will change as you zoom in and out. Those numbers will change. But I can take a look at what's 179 yards from me, what's 359 yards from me, and so on. And what's really cool, I'm going to pull my tablet closer to me here. What's really cool is if I tap this rangefinder button, again, that's in the lower right-hand corner there. Now I've got this red line that's coming out from my blue circle. And to the left of it, I have a marker that says 270 yards. What this allows me to do, if I just tap on that line and drag it up and down, I can move that, as far in or out as I want. So where this is useful, there's a ton of use cases for it. The first one that comes to mind for me is, let's say I range deer and the deer is at 260 yards. Let's say I shoot the deer, that's within my, effective range. I shoot the deer, I'm confident I made a good shot, I'm ready to start blood trailing. I can point my phone at the deer in that general area. I can go into the rangefinder mode. I can make 270 yards. Now I'm going to tap this orange button above, did I say 270? 260. Tap that orange button, hit done, and now it's put a waypoint there for me. So if I exit this rangefinder mode, I'm going to hit exit. You can see, obviously I wouldn't be hunting near, downtown Missoula, but I've got this waypoint here now that I have a landmark of where the deer was standing or pretty close to where the deer was standing so that I can start blood trailing. That's, for me, that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind for this. I'm going to use it whether I'm hunting here in Montana and I'm shooting across a canyon or a big open logged area or something. Everybody knows when you get up there, things look different. I'm going to use it when I'm deer hunting in northern Minnesota in the thick timber, because things really look different once you get down there and there's hazel brush above your head. But I'm going to know, all right, it was, it's not going to be 260 yards up there. It's going to be 60 yards maybe, but you still could get into some thick stuff. Another, you can use this for, I'm going to open it back up here. I could use this for planning a stock. Let's say I see an animal and I range it and it's 800 yards away, which is farther than I want to shoot. I can then place a waypoint on 800 yards. So I at least have a landmark as I'm stalking closer for about where that animal is. Or maybe it was standing in, a big open area or something. I want to place the waypoint kind of on the edge of that, or whatever works for you, right?
I was doing that a ton hunting antelope a couple weeks ago, trying to get a mark like right on the animal in that general area. And then I'd usually also mark some like key features that I'd be able to identify as I started my stock. Makes it so much easier to actually like get that way in and know what you're looking at. Because once you actually get there, everything looks a little bit different than what you thought it would.
Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. And we probably can't say a whole lot yet, but there's some advancements to come on that. We're always iterating on things. There's some new stuff coming down the pipe, hopefully next year, that we think are going to be pretty sweet. So we're going to exit that. I'm going to get my map back to north, and then let's dive into our map layers. So what layers are available to you are going to vary a bit based on your membership level. If you have a basic membership, meaning you had started a trial membership and that trial expired, or you previously had a premium or an elite membership and that expired, you go to what's called a basic membership. That doesn't really allow you to see many layers, right? You can't turn on the private lands, government lands, things like that. Those are for paid memberships. So we have kind of 3 paid levels. We have a premium membership that's good for one state. You get all the layers for Arkansas, Montana, Washington, whatever state of your choosing, as well as some nationwide layers that we'll take a look at here in a bit. We recently came out with a premium 2-state membership. That's been within a month or so.
Super recent.
Super new. That's something people ask for a lot. They said, hey, man, I live on the border in North Dakota and South Dakota. I'd really like to have just those 2 states. So that's an option now. The premium 1 state, that one's $29.99 a year. The 2 states, $44.99. Yep. So those are your kind of premium options. And then the elite membership is kind of our full spectrum membership. That gets you all 50 states plus Canada, and also gets you access to some elite specific tools that we'll cover in a bit, as well as some elite benefits that get you certain education courses, whether it be an elk hunting kind of education course or a shooting skills course we just came out with Seekins and Vortex. That's really cool. So the elite membership gets you all that stuff. We'll kind of mention some of those elite tools as we go on. So if you're typically hunting multiple states, elite's really the way to go. That's what this account here has. So if your account might look a little bit different, that might be why. But I open up the map layers menu. Again, it's in the lower left-hand corner, that button that says Hunt Map Layers. Tap on that. I have 2 states turned on right now, Minnesota and Montana. If I wanted to add another state, I'm going to scroll down, and you see all the 50 states plus Canada are listed here alphabetically. So if I wanted to turn on another state, say I want to turn on Iowa, I tap to turn on Iowa, scroll up, and I can see the 3 states I have turned on now: Iowa, Minnesota, Montana, and then Iowa's listed there with the other states. If I want to remove a state, I can open up that folder, that layer folder for Iowa, just by tapping on it. And then I'm going to tap remove state, and I can see it's gone.
You can also remove those down where it said turn on state. Those few that have the green slider next to them, clicking that's going to drop them right back down into alphabetical order in the list below.
So we can turn off Minnesota there. So that's a question we get sometimes. People say, hey, my layers are gone. I can't find them. Typically, the state has been turned off. You just got to scroll back down there and turn it back on.
Yep. And your states are always going to be at the top of that menu. Current conditions is the first thing that you see. You'll want to go down, find your state, and turn it back on.
Yep. So if I open up my Montana folder, I can see I have a few different layer options here. Every state is going to be different depending on, maybe it's just different types of programs that they have, like land access programs. Maybe it's different game unit boundaries and things like that. So your state might have more layers in this, it might have less. Every state is going to have private lands, government lands, and possible access. Almost every state has the hunting districts, or in your state, they might be called game management units, deer permit areas, hunting zones. Everyone calls it a little bit different, but same basic principle, right? I think Indiana or Illinois is the only one that doesn't, because they use counties.
Yep.
They do their kind of harvest reporting and stuff by county instead of by unit. So private lands, kind of what it sounds like. That's where you're able to see, if I scroll down and go to the map, that's where you're able to see those orange lines with the white names in there. It's giving you the private property boundaries, the land ownership information. If you want to learn more about a private parcel or a private landowner, I'm just going to tap on a parcel. So this one is, it's the bus garage here in Missoula, Beach Partnership. I get a tax address for them. I get the county and I get the acreage. So the tax address, we sometimes get questions on that. That is where they get their mail. It's not necessarily the address for that parcel, because especially when we're talking rural areas, agricultural lands, somebody might own a section, but they don't live there. They're not getting their mail there, right? So it's not the like address of the parcel. It's where they get their taxes sent to, because that's where we typically get this private land information, is from county tax assessor's office, or sometimes it's a state source. Most of the time, that's where that's coming from. So that's useful if you wanted to send a letter to somebody to ask for permission. You have their mailing address there at least.
One good thing to note too, like clicking on that property to get that info to pull up, you can click anywhere on the map and that query card is always going to appear, and it'll just tell you anything about that piece of land that you clicked on. So whether it's private or it's government owned, and then it'll usually, if you have the layers turned on, it'll also list like your hunt areas or your hunt units as well. You'll just have to scroll down a little bit further in that card to get the rest of that information.
So an example there, I just tapped on a piece of Forest Service land on the edge of town. It tells me Montana government lands, low national forest. It's a restricted hunting area because it's a recreation area. No discharge of firearms, gives me those restrictions. Tells me the hunt unit, it's 204. I can also get the weather for that area in the query card there. I just tap over to weather and it gives me sunrise and sunset time, gives me the extended forecast, gives me the moon, wind, precipitation, all that kind of stuff right there in the query card. That's how I typically get the weather, is I just tap on it and it pulls up there. So speaking of government lands, I see I have a layer turned on that I don't want turned on just yet. Let me turn that off. We'll get to that. So government lands or public lands are all color coded. And again, if you don't know what a certain color is, tap on it. That's kind of how our app, that's kind of the legend in the app. Instead of having it listed along the side with different colors, you just tap on it and it tells you. So this green here, this is all national forest. If I go over, this yellow is BLM land. See, my map's going a little slow there. Yellow's BLM. If I go, this blue here is state land. National parks are purple. Military installations are kind of like a pink color. Native American reservations, tribal lands, I can show you, is like a darker yellow. Right there's the Flathead Reservation. So that color. County lands are like a brownish. There's some here. Or is it city lands? This university land here. So everything's a different color. Again, just tap on it and it'll tell you who the managing agency is, whether it's Fish and Wildlife Service, Forest Service, BLM, state DNR, State Department of Forestry, whoever. All that information's in the query card there. Couple other layers I want to touch on in Montana. One we get a ton of questions on is the hunting districts or hunting units, different areas, right? They all have different names. In a state like Wyoming especially comes to mind. Every year during the application season and then kind of at the start of hunting seasons, we hear from Wyoming folks that our map doesn't match what they're seeing on the Wyoming Game and Fish website. What's happening there is they have a different species selected. So let me go back. So I got my layers open. I tap on, for Montana hunting districts, I tap on view options. That's going to pull up all of the different species districts for Montana. Deer, elk, and lion is selected by default for Montana. Most states are going to have deer selected because that's the most commonly hunted animal in most states. For sure, big game animal in most states. If you're looking for something different, all you need to do, like you have an antelope tag, you're going antelope hunting this weekend.
Yep.
All you got to do is tap that slider switch, and that's going to change the units on the map for you. So we often hear from people in Wyoming that have antelope tags, and they're saying the map, it's not matching. It's because they have mule deer units selected. Got to go change it over to antelope. And you can only have one turned on at a time. If you would turn a whole bunch of them on, it's going to be really difficult to tell what unit is what, right? You'd have a bunch of overlapping lines.
And these will be different for each state. So you'll want to take a look at it just to make sure you are set to the right one. Mm-hmm. I know if we've got anybody from South Dakota in here, that can be kind of an odd one. Yep. They actually go by species and geographic area. So their layers are broke out just a little bit different than what we're seeing here with Montana.
Yeah, so I'll show you here. South Dakota does theirs, they've got all kinds of different ones. They have Black Hills units for deer. They have East River, West River, Custer State Park. So that's something we hear often. It's like, man, I'm only getting half the data for South Dakota because the West River hunt units are the ones selected by default. So it only shows the units west of the Missouri River in South Dakota. If you're hunting east of the Missouri River, you just go and tap on the East River units. My mouse here is causing all kinds of problems for me. There we go. I got that little selector button there for the mouse. So that's something to take a look at in there. Kind of wrapping up state layers. The possible access layer, we get some questions on that. Those are private lands that may allow public access. Not every state has a whole bunch of this. Here in Montana, we do have a bunch, and most of it is timber company land or nature conservancy or other type of like land trust land. I grew up in Minnesota. Northern Minnesota has a bunch of like paper company timberlands where they allow public access. So what that is telling you is, hey, this is a spot that might allow public hunting, public recreation. Can't say for sure. Check with the Nature Conservancy or check with Weyerhaeuser Timber or whoever the owner is. A lot of times they'll have agreements with your state, DNR, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, whoever, to open up access to hunting, fishing, recreation. A lot of times there are certain restrictions. I know some of the lands here, they allow hunting, but they don't allow trapping because there's a lot of dog walkers there. Or, they allow hunting, but not recreational target shooting. They don't allow camping, things like that. So you want to make sure you're abiding by the rules and regulations of the landowner there. But that is, it is a nice thing to have where you can say, hey, this is private land, but there's public access. Sometimes people don't know that there's good access there, and you might have a spot with a little bit less pressure and competition.
It's usually what I find.
Yeah.
Not as many people.
And then the last layer I want to talk about in the state collection, in Montana, it's this block management layer. Your state is going to be called something different, but this is public access to private lands. It's different than the possible access in that these are just regular private landowners. A lot of times it's farmers, agricultural areas where they're enrolled in a state program where they get like a payment or a stipend for allowing access to public hunting. Kansas, this is walk-in hunter access, or WIHA. North Dakota's plots, private land open to sportsmen. There's access yes in Wyoming. Bunch of different, states. Everyone calls it different. I think 20 some states, might be almost 30, have a program like this. Not every state. A lot of them, it kind of started in the West. I think Kansas and Montana were two of like the first ones. Those are the oldest programs. But a lot of them do have this. These are like in Montana, block management. There's two types. There's a type 1 and a type 2. Your state, they might all be the same, but it's pretty sweet where I can roll up to this piece of land, put my information down, sign in to a box. There's either a booklet you sign in or a little card that you put into a box, and then you're able to go hunt. Everyone has kind of some rules and regulations, but that's another thing that can open up some land to you. And we just released a report. I wish I had the number. How many? It's millions and millions of acres.
Oh, it was 25 million.
25 million acres we found nationwide that are enrolled in programs like this. I think Montana's got 6 or 7.
It is a lot.
We're the biggest by far. Granted, we're the 4th biggest state, so that makes sense a little bit. But
do you want to pan the map over to one of those BMAs?
Yeah, why don't we do that? So here's a BMA. This is what they look like on the map. All the walk-ins, doesn't matter the state. They're going to have, can be a little tough to see, a black border with red dots in it. And if I tap on it, here we go. Again, it's going to give me the private land information. But if I scroll down, it's going to tell me that block management area information. And we'll have a link to the specifics, the website for this area, so that you can take a look at the specific rules and regulations for each spot.
Yep. Makes it super quick to know if there is like a sign-in box or what they want as far as like when you can park and when you can't. Yeah. Clicking that area info will give you that document from the state that'll lay out all that information for you.
Yeah. So there's other stuff in state layers. Like I said, every state's a little bit different. In the interest of time, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about some of these other folders or collections in the layers. If I scroll down below my states, the first one up is current conditions. These are different layers that you might not always want turned on. In fact, most of these layers I don't have turned on most of the time. They kind of serve a specific purpose, and then I turn them off. Things like the drought data. If I want to see what drought conditions are in a certain area, I'm going to zoom out. You can kind of get a look on a nationwide scale, see what, drought's looking like. We actually, in a lot of places in the West this winter, we had a lot of snow, which did some damage to game populations, but helped alleviate some drought conditions, at least a little bit. So that's a layer. You can see why I don't want that turned on all the time, because it puts that coloration on my map. I don't really need that when I'm out hunting. So that's something I might turn on, just take a look at and turn back off. The one I always have turned on is the active wildfire layer. We're still in fire season. Hopefully we're slowly coming to an end of it here as September rolls on. But if you look at my map right now, you can see those red dots that have flames in them. Those are all active fires. So I'm going to find one here, up here in Montana. As I zoom in, you can see that red coloration on the map. That is showing the last known boundary of that fire. And again, like anything, I can tap on it and it's going to pull up more information for me. This fire is named River Road East. We last checked our data source for an update today. We check it multiple times a day. I think it's 4 times
I believe so.
Something like that. It's like every 6 hours, we ping that to try to get an update. We'll tell you when we last checked, and then we'll tell you when the source last updated. So their data hasn't changed for a couple of days. So this fire might look a little different. We just have no way of showing that until, the Forest Service or whoever is, kind of fighting that fire updates that data. So we'll let you know. We last checked it today. It hasn't been updated in 2 days, a week. Maybe it was updated today.
One good thing to mention too, any of those layers that are in current conditions. So the drought data, fires, your precipitation radar, those ones are relying on service to be updated. You'll still be able to see like the active wildfires if you go out of service, but you aren't going to get any more updates on those. So just keep in mind that things are going to change and those aren't going to be accurate if you're outside cell service after a while.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you're backpacking into a wilderness area for a week, you don't have service, whatever you had seen last when you last had service, whatever it was showing then is what you're going to have until you get service again. So there's a few other ones in here you guys can check out. The CWD stuff is good to look at if you're in an area that has chronic wasting disease. You can see where the counties are that have had a positive test, and you can see the different zones and locations if your state has certain, kind of management zones or different rules and regulations for different areas. You can check that out there. Scrolling down from current conditions, land and access. A couple that I always have turned on are wilderness areas. Now that's capital W, federally designated wilderness. Things like the Bob Marshall, the Frank Church, the Boundary Waters, places like that. I have that one turned on just so I know where they are, what that looks like. If I scroll over, we got the Mission Mountain Wilderness. You can kind of see it here, that hash mark on your map, that's showing the wilderness areas. If you don't want to see that, just turn it off. Another one I always have turned on is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service hunt areas. These are typically going to be refuges that may or may not allow hunting. So if I scroll into this one south of town here, there's a refuge that allows hunting, but only certain types of hunting and only in certain areas. Most refuges have pretty regulated hunting, and they may only allow, it might just be archery whitetail hunting. It might just be waterfowl, might just be certain things on certain days. This refuge, for example, we can see has different units. This unit, it's just waterfowl once waterfowl season opens here at the end of the month. I go to the north, it's archery whitetail. So you can kind of see the boundaries there. You can see there's an area here that doesn't have any hunting allowed at all. So you can take a look at that. And again, what's cool, if I tap on the map to pull up the query card, I can scroll down, leave Metcalf National Wildlife Refuge. I can click that more info and that hunting URL button. That's going to take you to Fish and Wildlife Service's website, where you can get, kind of like we talked about with the block management or the walk-in areas, you can get more information. Definitely want to check that out. Some refuges are, on these days it's waterfowl hunting. On these days there's no hunting. On these days it's whatever. It's only kids, things like that. So make sure you're double checking that. Make sure you're staying legal and abiding by the rules and regulations there.
Having that layer on, if you are going into those areas, is definitely important. Like you can see there where it has that no hunting section. That's all part of that layer. So if it's not on, you won't be able to see where that boundary is.
Yeah, so you can see as I toggle it on and off, it's still going to be listed as a refuge because that's the public lands or government lands layer that's turned on. But once I turn the hunt areas on, then you can see those different units. Couple other that I turn on, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Pheasants Forever. You may or may not have these in your area. Those are pretty cool layers where we worked with RMEF, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, to showcase, or not showcase, but to kind of highlight where they've done work, where they've done land acquisitions. Like here's a piece here. This was relatively new within the last year or two, where this used to be private here, but the RMEF worked with the landowner. They were able to acquire this parcel and convey it to the Forest Service. Some of these will be public. Some of these will still be in private hands while they work to transfer it. But a lot of times, even if they are still private, they will oftentimes allow access. Again, do your homework, do your research. But that's something to take a look at. Same thing with pheasants. I have one marked up here. Here's a piece that Pheasants Forever has acquired. If I tap on it, I get some more information. This is a well-known area. They acquired it over 20 years ago. It's still private, but it's enrolled in the block management area, and you can go hunting on it. So that's cool. Just, you can kind of see some of the good work some of those NGOs are doing. Couple other ones that are noteworthy. I think the last one in here I want to talk about is the slope angle. So again, if I go to the mountains and I zoom in a bit, you can see that slope angle layer starting to show. So this is an easy way to visualize flat terrain, less flat terrain, steep terrain, really steep terrain. Those purple areas are real steep. Red is a little bit less steep, and kind of that gradient you see along the top going down to green. So you might use this to say, I want to find elk bedding areas. And I know elk typically don't like to bed on a slope that, I believe the research that's been done is like 20 degrees or less, or 25 degrees or less. I wouldn't like to sleep on a slope that's much more than that either. So it's a good way to visualize. Topo maps can sometimes be a little difficult to read, especially if you're not practiced at it. This is a good way to visualize what the terrain looks like, where those steep areas are, where those less steep areas are. Again, this is one I'll turn on when I'm doing some scouting. If I'm hunting a new unit, I'm doing some preseason scouting, I'm looking for bull bedding areas, north slopes that aren't super steep. I'll turn that on. When I'm actually out in the field, I turn it off because I want to be able to see the imagery on the map. Anything I'm missing there?
I think we're all good on that one.
Sweet. I'm gonna get the map back to Missoula. I'll go back into my map layers. Roads, trails, and rec. This is one that a lot of people don't ever go into, but I really recommend you do. Trails and recreation sites will be turned on automatically. I also turn on, I need to move this button. There we go. Trail slope, trail mileages, and the motorized roads and trails is a big one. So let's take a look at what some of these trails look like. Ooh, looks like my Wi-Fi is slowing down here. This is a brand new tablet. Here's what we're going to look at. These purple roads here that are typically on public lands, a lot of times on Forest Service. These are going to be your motorized roads and trails. If I turn this layer off, I'm just going to move this up so you can see. You can see I don't have those purple roads anymore. Kind of tough to see in that area. Let's go to another area here. There we go. So those are roads that you can probably drive on. To find out for sure, I'm going to tap on it. And I can scroll down in that query card, see the name of the road. I see the length. I see accessible by. Now that's going to tell you if there's like a width restriction on the road. So if this is a dirt bike trail and it's not wide enough to get an ATV or car down, it's going to say accessible by dirt bike. It's got a 50-inch width restriction. It'll say ATV dirt bike. This one here says overland, which would be like, your pickup truck, my Suburban, something like that. Accessible by that. I think on this road, I've seen Honda Civics before. I don't necessarily recommend that, but you might be able to do it. Surface type and open and close dates. Now, this is important in a lot of Western states because these roads will close during certain times of the year. In Montana, a lot of our roads will close in October. I think it's like the 14th, 15th. It's right before our general rifle season starts. They close a whole section of roads just to have a little bit more of a sanctuary area for deer and elk and other critters, instead of having motor vehicles running all over the place and people shooting them from the roads. That's part of the reason why we have such long seasons in Montana is, back in the day, they kind of said we can have long seasons and close some of these roads down and less ATV use, or we can allow a lot of ATV use and we can have shorter seasons. The folks in Montana at that time said, yep, close those gates when rifle season starts, or some of them close when archery season starts. And we'll have our 6-week archery season and 5-week rifle season. Every state's a little different on that. So tap on that and see when those gates open and close.
I still like to leave that layer on even after most of our roads shut down. If you're hunting those areas, those are a super easy way to walk in there and get way back if that road's closed.
Yeah.
So having them on makes them super identified, nice and easy to see, like from being zoomed out really far, and just saves you a bit of time.
Yeah, even though it's closed to motor vehicles, you could have a non-motorized bike. You can walk on them. You know, it's human-powered travel after those gates are closed. But yeah, like Connor said, much easier walking than off the road amongst all the deadfall and everything else.
Especially out here.
Yeah. So let me get back closer to town here. I'll show you what some of those trails layers look like. So here's a pretty popular hiking trail, the M Trail in Missoula. You can see those trails are all different colors. That's because I turned on the trail slope layer. If I turn it off, you can see they just go to black and white trails. So what that slope layer is doing is it's giving you kind of like that slope angle layer, showing you how steep things are. This trail that kind of comes along the spine is red. If you see that on there, that's pretty steep. If I go over to the fire road here that you see parallels the mountain, that's green because it's pretty flat. So that can give you, just at a quick glance, sometimes maybe a yes or no, whether you want to hike that trail. You might say, yep, I'm fit. I'm, got the mental fortitude or whatever it is. And I think because that's so steep, it's going to keep other people out of there. That's where I want to go. You might say, man, I don't really feel like hiking that right now. I'm going to take that green trail. I'm going to go the easier route. Whether you're just hiking around or whether you're out hunting or fishing or whatever you're doing. So those are the roads, trails, and recs layers. There's a couple other ones in there.
Just gonna comment on one of them if you want to scroll down just a touch.
Sure.
That forest visitors map, I guess you guys can probably see it. There's a bar over it for me. That is old school scanned in 2D paper maps from the Forest Service. We get calls all the time that our satellite imagery's disappeared for people, but their base map's still set to satellite. It's a good one to use if you're looking for like old road beds, is probably what I use it for the most, for like hiking and trying to get back.
There's some old mine data and stuff on there too. Different stuff.
Quite a bit. It's not one I'd recommend leaving on all the time though, just because it does hide a lot of our other information that we're showing on our maps.
Yeah. And that brings up a larger point. We often hear from customers saying some version of my map is obscured. There's a weird coloration. I don't know what this is. I would say 9 times out of 10, it's a layer that's turned on.
Almost always.
Yeah, almost always. It's, hey man, there's all these different colored blocks on my map. It's like the precipitation radar layer might be turned on. Or like Connor said, I can't see imagery. It's this forest visitor map. So if you're having trouble, first thing to do is go through your layers and turn stuff off and on. You can just see at a glance, oh, I turned it off. Oh, it cleared it up. It was the forest visitor maps. If not, try a different layer, right? If you do have trouble, you're not able to figure it out, take a screenshot, email it to us, help@onxmaps.com. We should be able to diagnose that pretty quick for you. Get it figured out.
Screenshots, super great for us. We can look at that and pretty much tell you right away which layer it is that might be affecting it.
Yeah. All right. We got a couple more layer collections here. The trees, crops, and cover is one that I love. I've been using it more and more since it came out. There's a lot in here. Don't have time to go into everything, so we'll kind of hit the highlights. The timber cuts layer is one that I always have turned on. That is going to show you logging on national forest. I'm going to see if I can find some here. I should probably put like a waypoint on some. I know there's some up here somewhere. Here's some.
Has a lot too.
So here's some logging. You can kind of see it. You might have to get close. It's a little faint, but it's showing timber cuts on Forest Service land. There was some logging here in 2016. If I tap on that area, it's going to again tell me Lolo National Forest. And then if I scroll down to the timber cut section, tells me the name of the cut, when it was completed, what type. A lot of them will say single tree selection cut, meaning they were cutting one species. Some will say clear cut. Some will say thinning, fuel reduction, depending on what it is. Sometimes they're doing like an area that had burned. And they're going down and cleaning up all those burned trees. That could be a hazard or something like that. Tells you the acreage, elevation, all kinds of stuff. So again, if you're not seeing that, it's only on national forest land. again, in areas that have been logged. A couple of states, we do have a state layer. Minnesota and Pennsylvania come to mind, where that the state DNR or Department of Forestry or whoever tracks that information like the Forest Service does. So I know in Minnesota, we have that data on state lands, county lands, even some private lands. Some states have that, some don't. If your state has that data available, we grab it and we put it in there. So that's another one to take a look at if you're in, that state and you see a timber cuts or a forest disturbance layer, I think it's called in some states. Another one that's cool to turn on is the historic wildfire. I'm going to go down to low here. So after a fire is put out, that next year, instead of it being in the active wildfire layer, it goes to historic because it's not active anymore. And it'll be symbolized on the map with these different colors, like you see here. That yellow, big yellow blob is the Lolo Peak fire from 2017. It was a pretty big fire south of Missoula here. What's this useful for? Animals love burnt over areas, as long as it wasn't too intense of a fire and it charred everything. Unfortunately, the Lolo fire kind of was like that. It still is just a lot of like matchsticks up there on the mountain. Generally speaking, though, great place to hunt for elk, deer, bear, morel mushrooms the year after a fire, 2 years, 3 years, because that canopy's been open and those fresh forbs and grasses can grow there. So it's not, I don't even know how to describe it. It's pretty well known. Animals like birds, right? Don't expect that. That's not like some insider information there. But they are great places to go and look for critters, especially those first couple of years as those green shoots start. And then you're going to have a lot of little trees and saplings that are going to obscure your view once you get down the road further. But so historic wildfire, it's one I don't always leave on. I use it when I'm scouting and then turn it off. Anything I missed on that?
The color changes based on the year that it was burned. You'll end up with like a dark orange. I think there's one right down there that's fairly recent.
2022.
Yep. So as more recent fires are going to be that darker color, and then as they kind of fade off into history, they become lighter. Zoom in on any fire though, and it's going to tell you that year. And you can also click on it like any other layer, and then just read it right out of that query card.
And I think we go back 20 years, a little more than 20.
I believe so. It does say in the details for the layer.
Oh, well, how neat is that? Let's take a look. Historic wildfire over the last 12 years. Okay, so we go back to 2011 there. Fantastic.
And that, what we just did, clicking on details, that is on most of our layers. If you're not sure what something does, just click that. It's going to give you a brief description and then a screenshot of kind of what it's supposed to look like on the map. So that way it can help you figure out exactly what you should be looking for.
Yeah, good point. We have that for just about every layer, I think.
I think all of them.
All right. So a couple of new layers or new-ish that we came out with last year are our crops and tree or land cover layers. The crop distribution layer, I'm going to turn on. We have 19 different crops across the country. So if I zoom in here, we don't have a ton of agriculture in Western Montana, mostly in the river bottoms. But you can see as I toggle that off and on, you can see those different colors on that BMA there. On your web map, if you hover your cursor over those colors, it'll pop up with what crop it is. You don't have a cursor on a mobile device like this. So if I tap on that green area, scroll down, that's alfalfa. If I tap on this yellowish green area, scroll down, that's hay. It's mostly what we have here in Western Montana, not a whole lot of soybeans or sunflowers or anything like that.
And you can actually filter those too. Back in that layer menu, any layer that says see options instead of details or info is going to have sub layers. So you can go and turn off all the crops that you don't want, just turn on the one you're looking for. And then that way it's only highlighting that important information for you on the map.
And we picked out kind of the major crops that have an effect on wildlife throughout the country. So everything from peanuts, potatoes, sugar beets, sorghum, millet, wheat, winter wheat, alfalfa, right? And we often get that question, how do we get that information and how current is it? We get the information from, it's a government source. and they do like flyovers with aerial spectrometry, I believe is the term, where they're able to tell what's planted where. And this data is from last year, because we're not able to get data, in the winter or spring, because you can't really tell what's growing yet, especially in the northern regions of the country. So they're doing the flyovers like this time of year, and we update the data in February of every year. So in February of 2024, we'll get the 2023 data. So you might say, well, that doesn't help me. It's not the current year. If you have some kind of understanding of the agricultural practices in your region, you can have a pretty good guess of what's going to be planted this year. Connor and I both grew up in the upper Midwest. It's corn and soybean country.
Yep, gonna flip every year.
Typically, if it was soybeans this year, if our map is showing soybeans right now, meaning soybeans in 2022, probably corn this year.
Yep.
In Montana here, if it was alfalfa last year, it's probably going to be alfalfa this year. It's not on like a yearly rotation. You could say the same for hay, various different crops like that. I used this a ton when I was in eastern Montana, hunting sage grouse, sharp-tails, and huns, looking for like those winter wheat fields or those cut wheat fields for huns, looking for alfalfa for really all of them, because alfalfa has a lot of bugs and the young birds are eating insects, grasshoppers, and stuff like that. You might just want to I just want to see cornfields. You turn off everything else and just have the corn turned on. Pretty neat layer there. The longer I use it, the more uses I find for it, seems like. Yep. All right. Crop distribution. Moving down, we have a bunch of different tree species layers. These, again, are taken through those aerial flyovers, where they're able to tell. It's all by 30 by 30 meter blocks. So if I I'm going to turn this one off here, deciduous tree and coniferous tree distribution. So you can see my map, I got this brown coloration on there. Again, Western Montana, a lot of pine, spruce, fir, larch, or tamarack trees. If I tap on the map, again, it's going to tell me fir, hemlock, spruce. Pretty typical here. So as I zoom in, it kind of fades a little bit, so you can still see what the map looks like. As I zoom out, it gets a little darker. Here, it's pretty blanketed fir, hemlock, spruce. If you're seeing little different like squares on the map, that's a 30 by 30 meter square. Each one of those pixels, they're called. What the map is showing, or what this layer is showing, is the dominant species in that 30 by 30 meters. So if you have an area that's 30 by 30 meters and it says oaks, it's not necessarily 100% oaks in there. That's the dominant species. There might be pine trees mixed in there. There might be elm or ash or whatever. But it's cool in that it gives you, let me get out of an area that only has pine trees, basically. I'm going to go up to Minnesota here, and I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see some different colors. I'm going to turn these layers on, make sure I got everything on that I need. And again, like the crops, you can turn different tree species off and on. So deciduous, same thing. You can get a look at what we have available for you there. Some other ones I'm going to turn on for this area are acorn producing oaks. So those are oak trees that are capable of producing acorns, meaning they're mature enough. Some oak species don't throw acorns until 5 years, 10 years, maybe even they have to be more mature than that. It's not saying, because some oak trees is kind of a cycle. 1 year is really good, and then they don't produce a lot for a year or two, and then they have a bumper crop. We don't know if it's actually producing a bumper crop of acorns this year. It's just saying this is an oak tree that is mature enough to produce acorns. Deer hunters, you already know the power of acorns in the fall, just deer magnets there. So you can turn that layer on. Another good one, both for deer hunters, but also rough grouse and woodcock hunters. The young aspen forests, you can see I turn that on. There's a lot of aspen in this part of the country. As I zoom in, more trees start popping. So if I tap on a layer, I can see young aspen. If I scroll down, that deciduous tree layer is also on. So it tells me aspen birch. I'm going to close my young aspen stands layer here. We did have a few people ask, hey, I want help finding, good spots to hunt rough grouse. I would use that young aspen stands layer. In a place like northern Minnesota, there's a lot of it, so it might not narrow it down a ton, but gives you a good starting point. But you can see here some of the different diversity of tree types. Deer are creatures of the edge. They like a diverse habitat. So you might want to use this to be like, oh man, there's a tamarack swamp that meets up to a ridge with a lot of oaks, or there's maple trees budding up to balsam trees, things like that. You got bedding cover, you've got feeding next to each other. Again, the more I use this layer, the more uses I find for it. You can just turn on if you want. I just want to know deciduous versus coniferous. I don't care what kind it is. You can turn that layer on to try to find that boundary there. So again, like the crop layer, I think of new stuff all the time. Anything I'm missing on the trees, crops, and cover?
I think we're good there. The only one that you skipped over is the wetlands, but it does the exact same thing. It's just going to highlight those areas that have potential to be wetlands.
Yep. And there will be a couple different types. There's herbaceous and woody wetlands. Mm-hmm. So whether it's like this area is a big tamarack swamp, or is it more cattail sloughs and marsh grasses and things like that? Use that for duck hunting, use that for pheasant hunting, for pinpointing like cattail areas, things like that. A lot of good uses for that one as well. I think we've hammered layers pretty well.
I think so.
All right, so we're going to move on from layers now. We're going to talk about offline maps. Now, this is a question we get all the time. You're like, man, Jack, Connor, this stuff's awesome, but where I hunt, there's no cell phone service. Us too, most of the time. So in the lower left-hand corner along the bottom, I'm going to tap where it says offline maps. You can see this menu pulls up. It's got a few different things. It's got an orange button that says new map. It's got a button that says go offline. And then down below, I have this list of maps that are saved to my device. First thing we're going to do, we're just going to save a new map. If you're starting fresh, that's what you need to do first. So let's say we want to go hunt this area here. I'm going to tap new map. You can see things change a little bit where I now have this red box on my map. I can still move it around. I can still drag my finger around and get it positioned just how I want. I've got a couple different options for map size and detail. If I tap the low button, I can zoom out and you can see I can get a map that's 133 miles wide. Every device is going to be a little bit different. This is an iPad, so the dimensions of your screen will kind of dictate what that red box looks like. If I tap medium, you can see it gets smaller. And I zoom in here, that's about 26 miles. If I go high resolution, that's going to be 7-8 miles wide. What I do most of the time is I use these medium resolution maps. So let's see what that looks like. If I drag this menu up a little bit, I can name this map. I'm just going to name it MN Test. It's in Minnesota and this is a test. And then I'm just going to hit the save button. And I can see in my menu there, that map is downloading. And you'll notice on the actual map screen itself, a faint green box. That's showing me the outline of the map. Once it downloads, that's going to turn a more solid green. That's going to let me know where I have maps saved so that I can go back and check later. I do recommend naming your maps. Otherwise, you're going to have a bunch like these down below here that say map 8/22/23. It's just the date and time it was saved. That doesn't mean a whole lot to me. So when I have 50 maps saved on my account, it's nice to know these are Minnesota maps. These are South Dakota where I pheasant hunt. These are areas where, I usually name mine after like a nearby town or a mountain range or a river, a geographic area. I did a sage grouse hunt in eastern Montana this year. I named all my maps. I just said sage grouse 23. You can name them all the same if you want, but I knew I have these maps out in this part of Montana where I didn't kill a sage grouse, so I probably don't need them anymore because I don't know if I'm going back.
That's me with my antelope maps.
I have them. So you can see this one saved. It's downloaded. I have that green line there. If I want to save another one, if I want to hunt a bigger area, I can go through the same process. And now with my finger, I'm just going to line those up. Sometimes I do a little overlap. Same thing. Test 2, save. And that's going to start downloading. So then you can make like this grid pattern. I have covering, I don't know, all directions from Missoula. I just gridded out most of Western Montana so that I just have maps saved everywhere. You'll notice some of these maps look a little bit different. So this one that says Bob Marshall, if I want to get over to that map, I'm just going to tap on the name. It's going to swing my map over to where that is, into the Bob Marshall Wilderness here, where I saved one on a previous class. You'll notice it says update available. What that means is some of the map data has changed in that area, and something that I have saved onto my phone is outdated. To update it, I can just tap that green check mark, and it's going to start downloading that update. Another way to do that is tapping the ellipses, those 3 dots to the right, and I can tap update that way.
One thing to mention with that too, after you update them, they very well may still say update available. It does happen from time to time. And we change our maps quite often. Things are always getting moved around.
Some places daily.
So if you've updated them recently, let's say you did it on Thursday and on Friday you're headed for a hunt, not too big of a worry if they say update available. But if you haven't touched them since the prior hunting season, probably want to update them just so that way they're ready to go and have that relevant new information for where you're headed.
Yeah, so don't freak out. Sometimes we hear from people, they're like, oh man, it always says update available and I can't use the map until I update. You can still use it. That map is still downloaded onto your device. You're still going to be able to see all the information, but maybe a landowner in there has changed. And that's the update.
As long as that green circle with check marks there, that map is ready for offline use. Though you do have a couple that aren't.
Yeah, so I have a couple here that don't have the green circle. They've got an arrow pointing down. That means I could be a couple of things. I saved a map on another device. So this is a tablet here, but let's say I saved one on the same account on my cell phone. It's not downloaded to the tablet until I go in and manually do that. The other thing that could be happening here is I might have downloaded this map previously. I don't need it anymore, so I offloaded it from this device. Like I was talking about my sage grouse maps. I came back from my sage grouse hunt. I don't plan to hunt that area of Montana again this year. I removed them from this device. So I'll show you what that looks like first. If I go down to this far bottom map, I'm going to tap on those ellipses, and I'm going to tap remove from device. It's going to give me this warning, and I hit remove. What that does is it removes all that downloaded data. So it frees up some storage space on my tablet, but it keeps the outline there. And if I go over to that area, you can see that map now has a red and white border. If you see that on your map screen, that map is not downloaded for offline use. The reason we have this option is, let's say I now want to go to this area. I don't have to go through the whole multi-step process of going to new map, finding the area, saving it, naming it, etc. I can just go back in here. I'm tapping that arrow that's pointing down, and it starts downloading it. So if I'm going to go sage grouse hunting next year, I want to go to the same area, I can go back to those 6 or 8 maps I had saved there in eastern Montana, tap that download button, and there I have them again. Saves you quite a bit of time versus going in and manually redoing each one.
It's another good reason to name them too. I do the same thing with my antelope spots out east. I go once, I'm done for the year, I'm not headed back, so I'm going to remove them from my device. But I want to be able to find those maps next year if I draw that tag, and can just download them really quick and be ready to go without having to spend the time to piece it all together.
Yep, I do that for pheasant hunt in South Dakota 1 week a year. I download them, When I'm done, I remove them just to save that storage space. If you don't want to do that, you certainly don't have to. If your phone has robust storage, they're adding more and more every day to new devices. You can keep them on there. But if you are running into, hey, I've got limited storage, offload those maps that you don't need and then re-download them again when you do need them.
Yep. And no real limit to this. If you've got a bunch of areas to save, you can save as many as you need.
So we get a few questions on offline maps of, can I still mark waypoints? Can I still see myself? Can I still track myself? Yes. Your offline map experience when you're offline is very similar to when you're online. There's a few layers that we mentioned earlier that won't update, like the active wildfire. Your weather forecast won't update if you don't have cell service, but you're still able to see your location, your blue dot, because your GPS receiver in your phone or tablet, as long as your tablet has a GPS receiver, not all of them do. Most people are going to use their phone when they're out hunting. That GPS receiver operates on a separate system from the cell towers. It pings the satellites, orbiting Earth, just like a handheld standalone GPS unit does. So you can still see yourself as you move, your dot moves. You can mark waypoints, you can track yourself. And then once you get back to service, all of those waypoints and tracks, which we'll cover all that in a moment here, then those sync up to your account and it's saved for future use. So you don't have to worry. Sometimes we ask people, hey, if I delete an offline map, are my waypoints going to be deleted? Think of those really as separate things. Deleting an offline map doesn't delete any waypoints that are within it, doesn't affect them at all, so no concerns there.
One thing too, offline, you can still turn on and off layers as needed. So if you've got like the government lands on, you hike into the Forest Service area and you're not going to hit any borders. If you don't want it on, you can just toggle it off and then that'll help kind of clean up that image a little bit, but you can still turn it back on at any point.
Right. Last note on offline maps. One thing I recommend, if you're going to be in an area where you're in and out of cell service or you have no service at all, I recommend putting your phone in airplane mode. That's going to be probably the biggest drain on your battery, is if it's always trying to ping a cell tower and try to get service, it's going to drain your battery pretty fast. I do always carry an external power bank. They're pretty ubiquitous now. There's all kinds of brands, OtterBox, Mophie, Anchor, Dark Energy, Goal Zero, all kinds of different ones. You can probably find them at your local grocery store or department store. We still have department stores?
I think so.
That's the thing we used to have. I do carry one of those. Some of them just give me one charge for a day hunt. Some of them can give you 4, 5, 10, depending on how big it is. But if you put your phone in airplane mode, it's not going to be pinging the cell towers, and it's going to automatically put your device into offline mode so that it's going to load up those offline maps. If you're still wanting to be able to be in touch with home, if you're kind of intermittent service, what I do, a lot of places I know if I climb up to the top of a ridge, I can get some service. I'll just flip it out of airplane mode, send the text messages that I need or do what I need to do, and then flip it right back into airplane mode. And you can go, if you're using your phone screen sparingly and you keep it in airplane mode, a newer cell phone with a good battery can go for days, really, on airplane mode. Offline maps, anything else?
I think we're good there.
Awesome. We're going to go into our map tools now. So flip my outline over here with my notes. Map tools along the bottom of my screen here. And I should note, your bottom of your screen might look a little bit different. You see mine has this trail camera tab here. We'll get to that in a moment. That's brand new. It's currently rolling out, so not everybody has it. Everybody will soon. But for right now, we're looking at the Tools tab. And the most common tool people use in onX is waypoints. There are 2 ways to mark a waypoint on your mobile device. The first one is tapping Add Waypoint. You can see that red X in the center of my map. This one here, I probably should have deleted some of those old ones. That just got placed there. That might not be where I want it. All I need to do is tap the map where I do want it. And I recommend, zoom in as far as you can. Let's say I want to go there. I've never been there, but let's say I want to check this place out and I want to have a waypoint so I can find it later. Again, I recommend naming your waypoints. I went through, it's been over a year now, but I went through and did an audit of my like 1,400 waypoints, and I deleted pretty much everything that didn't have a name and didn't have an icon with it. It was a red X and it had the date and the time. I don't know what that means after the fact. So this could be a duck blind. And then what I'm going to do, I tap that more button. Now we have like 90 different icons.
We have tons.
We're pushing 100 different waypoint icons here. So I could make this a wolf if I wanted. I could make this, I know we have some ducks in here. They're alphabetical. If I knew the alphabet would help. I can make it ducks. I can make it a blind, whatever I want, right? And then you can also change the color of it, which is something I do religiously. I do my colors by species for the most part. But right now, I'm going to save it so you can see what that looks like. You can see it's a duck blind. I got the blind icon and it's yellow. What I do on my personal account is each species gets a different color. So, you know, bears might be blue because I like alliteration. Then it pretty much stops there because we don't have a color that starts with E for elk. Elk waypoints are one color. Bear waypoints are one color. My grouse spots are one. My deer spots are another. My fishing spots are one. No right or wrong way to do it. I would say the only wrong way to do it is to do nothing. If you're doing all the same color, all the same icon, you're kind of leaving something on the table there. After a while, like I said, I think I have 1,500 waypoints on my account. If I had 1,500 red X's with no information, how do I know what that means? So I'll mark, you know, hey, this was an elk rub. This is a wallow. I saw ducks here. I found wolf scat here, whatever it is, right? And then another cool thing we can do with waypoints while we're here are some of these waypoint tools. So I can add a wind indicator on there. I can have it set to show the current wind or show the optimal wind. So if I have it say current wind, it's going to tell me 7 miles an hour out of the north at this location. I do this for a lot of my upland hunting spots because it doesn't really matter what direction the wind's blowing. I'm still going to hunt it. I just might hunt it from a different direction so that my dog's nose is pointing into the wind as we're walking. Let's say this is a deer stand, for example, in this hypothetical. I want to go in and edit. I'm going to set the optimal wind. And let's say I only want to hunt this stand on north winds. So I'm going to select north, northwest, and northeast. Leave the other ones blank. Apply. And then now if I close this out, you can see it's 7 north and it's green, meaning good. If I tap on it, I get a little bit more information. Good wind. It tells me where it's coming from. If this were a south wind, that would be lit up red so that it's bad. So if you're a deer hunter and you have a bunch of different deer stands, put what winds you want to hunt on all of those. Then you can go in later and look and see, I have 10 stands. 3 of them are red. 4 of them are yellow, meaning an okay wind, and 3 of them are green. That kind of narrows my choices down to those 3 stands if I'm really concerned about having a good wind, which most deer hunters, especially the archery deer hunters, certainly are. So the wind tool is something I use quite a bit. Another thing you can use is the radius. Again, different use cases for this. You can set this radius at different yards or miles. It will, that's the word I'm looking for, default to 100 yards. People will use this for states that have like safety rules where you have like a zone, a radius around an occupied dwelling or a private residence or something like that, where you can't discharge a firearm within 100 yards or 200 yards or whatever your state is. So people will do that and put them in all these areas so they know where they can't discharge a firearm legally. Some people will put it at, let's say, 50 yards because I'm archery hunting. I know I'm not going to shoot past 50 yards. I can easily see the ground that I'm able to cover with a bow shot. I've seen people, our friend Cody Rich one time was demoing. He's a Western elk deer hunter. He put a mile radius around every trailhead around this area, figuring most people aren't going to go more than a mile deep, or you might say 2 miles. And it kind of enclosed off all this area, but there was a chunk in the center that was more than a mile from every single trailhead. And he was like, that's where I want to target, because there's probably not going to be people there. Like a lot of our tools, there's really no limit to the use case. It's your creativity and what you think is going to work for you. So I'm going to apply that. We kind of went down a rabbit hole there. Going back to tools. I'm actually going to get back to my location. The other way you can mark a waypoint is by hitting mark my location. That's going to put a waypoint on your spot. That's what I use 9 times out of 10 when I'm out in the field. I come across a rub, mark my location, then I go back in, I tap on the waypoint, and I edit it. I'll put the rub icon, I'll make it green for elk or whatever, and do it that way. When I park the truck, I mark where the truck is so I can find it again. How else?
There is one other way on your phone you can make one. If you don't have a menu open, anywhere you press and hold on the map, it is eventually going to open up that menu, and it dropped a waypoint right where you were holding.
Yep.
So that's probably my biggest way of doing it. I'm usually less worried about how accurate they are and just get like the general spot. Do that really quick, give it a quick name, save it, come back to it later to fill out the rest of the details and make sure it's got all that information for me.
Right. So that's kind of the 1,000-foot level of waypoints. We could really go deep. We're already over an hour here, so we're going to move on to line distance. Now, the line distance tool is going to allow me, if you can kind of see, might be a little tough there. Let me get out of the city, might help get to some Forest Service. So you can kind of see a crosshair on my map in the center. If I hit this drop point button, that's going to be the first point on my line. Let's say I want to measure how far to the border of the Forest Service here. Drop point. Now, as I zoom out, I can see 720 yards. So this is before we had that new rangefinder and compass capability I showed earlier. This was how I would kind of measure how far something was. You know, I would do this for, all right, we shot that bear. It was by that clump of trees. It was 300 yards away. I would draw a line that was 300 yards or something like that. You can use this to measure, I mean, really measure anything. Some things people will do is measure the perimeter of their property. They'll measure how long a fence row is, a bunch of different uses for it. Sometimes people just want to, I've used it just to like highlight an area, just draw a line around it of this is a good spot to glass for bears or something like that. I'm going to just save that for now. I'm going to get rid of that. And what's cool is if you tap on the line, it's also going to give you the elevation profile for that area. So you might say, I want to get over there. What would it look like if we hiked in a straight line? And this doesn't look too bad. We're gaining, well, we're still gaining over 600 feet or almost 600 feet in 700 yards. It's a little steep. You know, if it was 600 feet over a mile, not so bad. Maybe I don't want to take that route. Maybe I want to find a better one. Just giving you more data there to help you make decisions. Similar to the line distance tool is the area shape tool. Kind of same process. I'm going to go around and drop some points, but as I drop more now, you see it's making a polygon. And I can go just like all markups. I can change the color of this. I can make it different styles, things like that. I'm going to hit save. So now I got this dotted line because that's the style I chose. What's cool with this, it's going to tell me the acreage and the perimeter. So one of the most common uses we see for the area shape tool is planting food plots. If you're a person who does some land management, you can just draw an area shape around your different plots. And some people will do it to get the acreage, to know how much seed they need to buy and fertilizer and herbicide and whatever. Some people will do it just to show these are all of my brassicas. I make them all the same color. I can see where they are. This is where I have rye planted or whatever your, you know, your food plots are, just to keep track of them. Some people do it for timber cuts, for areas that they were doing some timber stand improvement, areas that they were doing a controlled burn, just any kind of area of a property you want to highlight. I think that's kind of one of the common uses for area shape tool.
Yep, mostly. I will say quick too, this won't be relevant if you watch this recording later on, but if you're on an Android, there is a chance right now that if you make an area shape, it might be a solid color in the middle of it. It's a little bug we have going on. Fix is coming soon though, so if you are experiencing that, just bear with us. It should be fixed here in a couple weeks.
Awesome. We are going to move on from tools right now. There's a couple other in there, but we're pushing up on 90 minutes already. So we're going to go to the tracker. This is another one of my favorite aspects of the app. Lower right-hand corner of my map says tracker. I tap it. If I hit start, you can see a timer start. You can see distance and speed there. You can see that my blue dot on the map is now red. If I were moving right now, you would see my dot moving on the map, and you would see a blue dotted line behind me everywhere I walk. That's like a breadcrumb trail showing you where you walked, where you drove, where you've boated, wherever you've traveled. So I will do this, especially if I'm hunting a new area I haven't been to. I'll mark my truck, and then I will do the tracker, and I will be able to tell everywhere I walked that day. So I can maybe find my way back is the most classic example. Maybe I came to an area where there was a lot of deadfall, which is pretty much everywhere in Western Montana, at least where I've been going lately. I know where to avoid an area. I've used this for, if I get an animal down, say I get an elk and I need help packing, I can save my track. I'm just going to stop this one right now because we're not moving. It won't even let me save it because there's no data there, but it would let you save it. But I can send that track to Connor because he's going to help pack my elk out if I get one. Don't worry, you're probably safe. So that he knows the route in to get to my elk. You know, maybe it's not the best route. I might not want to send it to him if I've been hunting all day and went all over, right? But let's say I had walked into a glassing knob and I shot an elk there just like I planned, or into a wallow. Now he's got the exact route in to get to me. Use this for tree stands. If I got a new buddy coming to camp and say, hey, go to this tree stand, here's the track, I can send it to him so that he knows, you know, walk this track, because if he gets off it, he's going to go through a swamp, or he's going to go through a deer bedding area and blow them all out. All kinds of different uses for that. And I should mention, you can share any markup with another person. So I just tapped on this waypoint here, and along the bottom it says share. I'm going to tap that share button. You see there, it's going to be view only. So if I do share it with Connor, he can't delete it. He can't then go in and make a bunch of changes. He can't send it to all his buddies. It's my waypoint, or it's my track. I own it, right? So I can share it with him and say, hey, here's a good duck blind, go in there. You know, I can't hunt Sunday morning, mallards were flying, good luck. Let's say we have a falling out and I don't want him to be able to go back there. I can pull that waypoint back so that he doesn't have it. Now, Connor's a smart guy and he might just remember where it was, but that's the risk you take. We would never have a falling out though.
No, we wouldn't.
Right. So you can share, you know, that's a big safety thing with people, you know, with your significant other or a friend. Hey, I'm going in by myself. Here's where I'm parking. If I don't come out at night, you don't hear from me. Heaven forbid, you know, at least search and rescue knows where to start, or they know where to go looking for you, something like that. Never can be too careful. Hope it never happens, but better to be safe than sorry. What am I forgetting on tools? We hit it?
I think we're good on tools, yeah.
All right. So again, there's a lot more in there. This is kind of a 101. We have other master classes that go a little more in depth on some of these. We're going to kind of go through these last few things a little bit quickly here because we're coming up on time. Choosing different base maps. So in the lower right-hand corner here, right above my compass button or my location button, you can see it says hybrid 2D. If I tap on that, that's where I can select my different base map. If I get out of this flat area, it's a lot easier to see. I'm going to go right here. If I go to satellite only, you can see that I lose those topo lines. Now this is, you know, kind of, if you're familiar with Google Earth or other mapping programs, this should be familiar to you. It's satellite imagery. It shows me what's on the ground. As I zoom in, I can begin to see more. If I don't want to see that and I want to see elevation changes, the topography, I go to the topo map, and it's like, kind of your classic paper topographic map showing those contour lines. Those contour lines are going to be different depending on what part of the country you are. They might be 10-foot contours. They might be, I think the biggest we go is 40. So it depends where you are. If you're in Florida, they're going to probably be 10-foot contour lines. If you're in Colorado, they're going to be more like 40. We do that just so that the maps are not, if you had 10-foot contour lines in Colorado, it'd be pretty full up.
Oh, yeah. And those do change a bit as you zoom in and out. As you zoom in further, you'll get finer contour lines if they are there for your area. As you zoom out, you're going to step up those increments just so it keeps your map looking a little bit clearer.
Right. What I use most of the time is the hybrid map because I get both. So I'm able to see satellite imagery and the contours. I use that probably 90% of the time, especially when I'm out in the field. When I'm scouting, one of the things biggest, favorite things to hunt, spring bears in Montana. That's when I use the topo a lot to try to find south-facing slopes, because those are the ones the bears are out on first in the spring because the snow's melted and the grass is growing. Elk, I might be looking for north-facing slopes because it's thick timber, it's cooler in September, all that good stuff. I can also go to a 3D map by tapping 3D there, and you can see my map kind of changes. And you can do all this on your web map on your computer as well. We're not going to get to it today, but all of the features we showed on here, except for like the tracker, are available online on a computer. All you need to do is go to onxmaps.com and log in. Your account will be there. Use the same email and password. All your waypoints and everything that you save on your mobile device transfer there, and vice versa. That's where I think 3D really shines, is on the bigger screen of a computer. You can really kind of zoom in and get a better look on the bigger screen versus the phone screen. I find it a little bit difficult sometimes. But you can zoom in here, and you can take a look at, all right, what does this actually look like? There's a saying, I don't know where I heard it, but they're like, man, topo lines lie. You might look at something and be like, oh man, they're spaced out. That's not very steep. And then you go into 3D and you're like, oh boy, that's a little steeper than I thought. I think everybody that's hunted the West in the mountains has kind of had that experience of showing up to the trailhead or showing up to the hunt area and saying, looks a lot different than it did on the map. I know, especially coming from central Minnesota, coming from Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
Probably similar experiences.
Always steeper.
Always steeper than it looks, for sure.
One thing to note with 3D too, on your phone or a tablet, that is going to be only when you're in service.
Right.
You won't be able to do that while you're out in the field offline. Might be something we do later on down the road, but for now it is just going to be while you have service.
Right. One other thing I want to mention in there quick is this recent imagery tab. Now, this is an elite only feature. So if you have the elite membership, that's one of the reasons you upgrade is to get this recent imagery. If I tap that button, let me get to a good spot here. Where's a good spot? We'll just go in here so we can see a little bit. So as I toggle this, you can see the imagery changes. It's going to be a little bit less detailed than our regular imagery. So right here, this is regular imagery. I toggle it on, that's recent imagery. Now, this is imagery that's been taken within the last 2 weeks or thereabouts. It's updated every 2 weeks. On your computer, if you pull this up, it'll show you the date range it was taken. And on your computer, you can also scroll back. I think you can go back to March. April or March, when we kind of started this program. So you can scroll back through time to see how that changed. So this is useful for, coming this fall, you'll be able to tell, hey, has that cornfield been harvested? What are snow levels looking like later on in the year? Is this area I want to hunt covered in snow? I might not be able to get there. You could check water levels sometimes in wetlands for duck hunting. Just check vegetation in general, check whether leaves have fallen. Like we said, it is a little bit lower resolution than regular imagery, It's intended to kind of just give you one more piece of information of what's going on in that area to help you plan out your hunts.
Yep, definitely not intended to be on at all times. And like 3D, that one's going to be in service only on your phone for now.
Right.
No, won't be able to use that offline.
I think of that more as a scouting tool than an in the field tool. I used it. I was talking about our sage grouse hunt. We were also hunting Sharpies and Huns just to see, hey, what do these fields look like? Because a lot of the fields have been harvested. We were looking for either green alfalfa fields or crops that hadn't been harvested yet sometimes.
Sure.
Or some of those, those Huns, we were looking for wheat fields that were harvested and they were in the wheat stubble.
Looking for pothole country and anywhere you can find water, ducks.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Last kind of major thing right now is our search function. A lot of people don't know we have this. Super useful. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a magnifying glass. If I tap that, it pulls up the search. You have two options here. You can search for a location or you can search by private land. Location is how you would search for coordinates. If you get coordinates from a buddy or from another mapping app or from a website or anything like that, you can type those coordinates in here. For example, we have these search examples here. I'm just going to select the coordinates. And it's going to bring me over there and put this gray icon on the map. I can zoom in on it and I could put a waypoint on there if I wanted or do whatever. So that's how people like, hey, can I search for a waypoint or search for an area? That's one way to do it. If I go back in, clear that out. I could also search for Yellowstone National Park, and it's going to pull that up. All I have to do is tap, and this brought me to Summer Village of Yellowstone in Alberta. So you got to do some looking in the search results to see what you want there. You can search for towns, mountains, lakes, counties, national parks, all kinds of stuff.
Any of the recreation points that show up will be able to be searched too.
Yeah. Private land. So let's say I'm just going to search for Smith. Search. That's going to give me all of these Smiths that are in my area. It prioritizes search results that are nearest to what the map is looking at. So if I have the map centered on Western Montana and I search the last name Smith, it's going to give me Smiths around Missoula first and then radiating outwards. So if you're looking for somebody in Florida who's named Smith, but you're in Maine, move the map down to Florida, zoom in as close as you can to where it is, then do the search. That's going to give you the best search results. Again, Smith, probably not the best search keyword. If I know the person's first name, John Smith. Wasn't he in a Disney movie?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, Pocahontas, I think. Anyway, John Smith, right? Still a lot of them. I picked a generic name on purpose. These guys are laughing at me because I know good trivia.
He's also a historical figure.
So the more information you can put in there, the better. If you know middle name, if you can get close to their house, that's going to give you the best options there. What did we forget?
Ooh, I don't know. I think we got it.
I think we pretty well covered it. We're over 90 minutes. We used to try to do this in an hour.
There's too much new stuff to do it in an hour.
I'm going to stop screen sharing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a couple of more slides here and we'll get to our Q&A. So we do have a discount offer for anyone that doesn't currently have a membership. If you go to onxmaps.com or to that bit.ly URL there to purchase a membership, you enter code APP101. That'll save you 30% off your first year. That's only good your first year, only good on onxmaps.com. The app stores don't accept promo codes. So if you try to purchase through Google Play Store or Apple App Store, it's not going to work. Got to go through our website. If you have any trouble with that, again, email help@onxmaps.com. We'll be happy to get that applied for you and get you set up. If you're looking for more information, our website has great tutorials on it. You can go to our YouTube channel for some different demos and how-tos All of our old master classes are uploaded there. This one will be uploaded there tomorrow. So you can go back and look. We have a whole kind of library now of whether it's kind of app how-tos, whether it's how to scout for different species, whether it's, we did a whole bunch of like upland bird scouting last year, elk scouting, deer scouting. We have a cooking class on there of cooking deer, different stuff. Our customer support center, I've mentioned them before, and it's not just because they're sitting here, but they are some of the best in their business. Located here in America, will answer your call. Most of them are based out of our Missoula office right here, so you can give us a call during business hours, during the week, or email. We still have text, correct?
We do.
We also text us.
Text number can be found on our website. If you do email us, we respond to all of those within 24 hours.
Yep.
If you message us tonight, you're going to get a response tomorrow by 5 o'clock Mountain Time.
Yep. So give us a shout. We would hate for somebody not to have, full confidence in the app or something not making sense. Let us know. We're happy to take care of you. And of course, take a look at future master classes. We have some cool ones coming up. Next week, we have a rifle elk hunting class with Cody Rich. We're doing some onX office hours classes. These are kind of lunch hour classes. We try to move them around a little bit, noon Mountain Time, 11 Mountain Time. Those are kind of just an ask me anything type class. So if you have a question here that you didn't quite get answered, we're not able to get to all of them, unfortunately. Pop into the office hours. Most of the time, it's just me sitting here answering questions as they come in for about an hour or so. We're also doing some stuff with Sam Soholt with his Stamp It Forward project. If you haven't, want to give him a shout out. He's rucking 100 miles across North and South Dakota right now to raise money for purchasing federal duck stamps.
Trying to raise $100,000.
Trying to raise $100,000. So if you go to publiclandtees.com, this is just a shout out because Sam does awesome work. You can donate to him, and he's going to try to buy, I think it's $100,000 divided by 25. Is that 4,000 duck stamps? Yep. He wants to buy, which the duck stamp program is fantastic. By law, 98% of all of that money has to go to habitat acquisitions and improvements. We're also doing some stuff with the NDA, bunch of them coming up. You can go to the website listed there, get signed up for future ones. I'm going to have Eli post the giveaway link in the chat right now. We're giving away some of these new t-shirts. We just got these in. They are super comfortable. One of my favorite designs we've come out with. Giving away 10 of those to everybody who enters. Takes you about a minute to enter. We just ask for your name and your email and your shipping address so we can get it shipped out to you. I'll email you tomorrow if you've won. You'll get one from my onX email address. Don't email customer support. They don't know who won. Then they're going to email me, and then I have to email them back instead of me just emailing you. So you'll get an email tomorrow morning. I'll get them shipped out. You'll have them sometime next week, most likely, depending where you live. Let's do some questions and answers real quick. Let me pull up my sheet here. What tablet's best suited to running the Hunt app while driving in the backcountry? Couple things there. If you have a newer vehicle, I talked for so much, I ran out of words. If you have a newer vehicle, you can use Apple CarPlay to put the map up on your dash. I drive an 05 Suburban, so it's got to be newer than that because I don't have it. Android Auto is coming soon. I'm hearing hopefully early October sometime now. So you Android folks will have that. That would be my first recommendation. If you're like me and you don't have, an in-dash unit like that, as far as tablets, my recommendation for tablet is you get what you pay for. We've had some issues in the past, my entire time here, of like a real cheap tablet. I think one year Verizon did like a giveaway on Black Friday. And those are different things on Black Friday. And it was a real basic tablet that you couldn't really update and wasn't able to run the Hunt app. iPads are generally good. Samsung tablets are pretty good.
The one catch with iPads, if you buy a Wi-Fi only iPad, our app will work on it, but it won't show your location. Apple didn't put a GPS receiver inside those. So if you want to be able to track where you're at while you're out in the field, you'll want to get one of the cellular capable iPads.
Yeah.
Don't have to have a plan for it, but it'll at least make sure that you can see where you're at on the map.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my recommendation. If you're worried about whether it's going to be tough enough, get a case like I have on here. This is a kind of a fancier OtterBox case. Put it in a case, get a screen protector. That's your best option for running a tablet. We talked about, can it provide the types of trees on the map? Yep, that's your trees, crops, and covers layers. We talked about that quite a bit earlier. Canadian content. We don't have time to really get deep into Canada, but for elite users, you do have access to some Canadian data. We've got the Crown land up there and most of the different types of public lands up there. We've got different hunting units. We've got outfitter units. One thing we don't have like we have in the US is the private land data. Laws are totally different up in Canada as far as privacy laws and being able to acquire that data. If it was as easy as getting it in the US, you can bet we'd have it. Every province is a little different. We have boundaries.
For most of the provinces, we do have boundary lines.
Yeah, so we have boundary lines for most of the provinces, and I think the territories as well.
I believe so.
We're just not able to get the private land ownership data like we have in the US. Again, it's a totally different set of laws and regulations up there. So if we're able to get it in the future, you can bet we will, just not at this time. Question, is a north wind blowing north going south or south going north? So that is coming out of the north. So if you put wind on a waypoint and it says north wind, it's coming out of the north. There'll be an arrow pointing. That's the direction the wind is blowing. Let's see. Weather. We touched on weather a little bit. That's going to be, again, only online. My favorite way to see the weather information is just to tap on the map like we talked about and then tap that weather card at the top. That's going to tell you current conditions, forecast, all that good stuff. And with that, we went almost 2 hours. Quite a lot.
Still more to cover.
Still more to cover. So, like we said, this is a 101. I want to thank everybody for staying on with us tonight. I hope this helped. We do 101s once a month. You can keep tuning in. Everyone's a little bit different depending on how long I ramble. We are doing other classes like I talked about earlier if you want to do more of a deep dive. Otherwise, give us a call or an email and we're happy to help out. Get entered for that giveaway. If you haven't yet, that closes at midnight tonight. So if you're watching this on YouTube, unfortunately, it's not open for you. But we do them at just about every class. So sign up for a future one. Anything else?
Just plug our Smart email one more time. If you do need to reach out to us, it's just help@onxmaps.com. Shoot us an email with any questions after this, and we'll be happy to answer them tomorrow for you guys.
Yeah, sounds good. And tomorrow's Friday. Anybody who's heading out hunting this weekend, hope you have some luck. And if you do have some luck, let us know. We always love hearing from people when they're successful. So have a good night, everybody.
Thanks.